Good day, everyone. I am Lennon Daga from Obtech M11. The topic that I am about to discuss is very relevant to all of us and might be helpful in knowing more about ourselves, for it explains in every stages the behavior and learnings we develop that is influenced by our environment to the people around us. The Module 7 enables us to know Erikson's psychosocial theory of development. Life is a continuous process involving learning and trials which help us to grow. Erikson's theory guides us and helps us to tell us why. At each stages, we encounter different needs, ask new questions, and meet people who influence us. In this module, challenge yourself to explain the 8 stages of life to someone you care about. Write a short story of your life using Erikson's stages as framework. Suggest at least 6 ways on how Erikson's theory can be useful for you as a future teacher. Before we proceed, let me give you a short background information about Erik Erikson. So, Erik Erikson is a father of psychosocial development. His theory, post-Freudian theory, it is a modification of Freud's psychosexual theory. He coined the term identity crisis. Identity crisis means the challenge or change we face in every stages of development. A person can either resolve it or leads to identity confusion. He is a world-famous psychoanalyst, anthropologist, psychohistorian, and a medical school professor. So he is a teacher. Intended his theory of personality to extend rather than repudiate Freud's psychoanalysis and offer a new way of looking things. Before we delve into Erikson's 8 stages of psychosocial development, the Module 7 allows us to have first the introduction or overview about his theory. The introduction to the 8 stages. Number 1. Erikson's psychosocial term is derived from 2 source words, namely psychological and social. Psychological, or the root word psycho, relating to the mind, brain, personality, or etc. While social is the external relationships and environment. Number 2. Erikson's theory was largely influenced by Sigmund Freud. Erikson expanded Freud's psychosexual theory by highlighting the cultural aspect of personal development. This is the reason why Erikson puts more emphasis on the impact of social experience on personality. Number 3. It's also interesting to see how his ideas develop over time, whereas aided by his own journey to the psychosocial crisis stages model that underpinned his work. Number 4. Like other influential theories, Erikson's model is simple and well designed. The theory is a basis for broad and complex discussions and analysis of personality and behavior, and also for understanding and for facilitating personal development of self and others. It can help the teacher in becoming more knowledgeable and at the same time understanding of the various environmental factors that affect his own and his students' personality and behavior. Number 5. As such, Erikson's theory is useful for teaching, parenting, self-awareness, managing and coaching, and dealing with conflict, and generally for understanding self and others. Number 6. Various terms are used to describe Erikson's model. For example, Erikson's biopsychosocial or biopsychosocial theory, bio refers to biological, which in this context means life. Number 7. Sinuggest din niya na ang development ng tao ay sinusundan ng epigenetic principle. Ang epigenetic principle ay hiniram niya sa field ng biology, na kung saan sinasabi ng principle na ito na ang development ng isang tao ay step-by-step procedure and meron siyang predetermined trait. So kumbaga, on this particular stage, dapat ito yung ma-develop, and then after mag-develop nito, ang susunod na stage na ang magde-develop. So ganyan din daw ang personality ng tao. Pag hindi na-develop ayon sa predetermined traits at sequence yung isang tao, hindi magde-develop ang taong ito. Kapag hindi successful ang isang tao doon sa particular na stage ng development, magkakaroon ito ng epekto sa next stage. Pero, pag naging successful naman, most likely magiging successful rin ang mga susunod pa na stages. Number 8. In each stages, may dalawang opposing interaction na nangyayari sa psyche ng bata na tinatawag nating contrary disposition. Each psychosocial crisis is represented as one versus another. The first one, we have syntonic, the positive side or positive disposition. Example is trust. On the other side, we have dystonic, the negative disposition. Example is mistrust. Like I said earlier, pag hindi successful yung isang tao sa stage na iyon, made-develop niya yung mistrust. Pag successful naman ay trust. Number 9. According to the theory, successful completion of each stage results in a healthy personality and the acquisition of basic virtues. If a stage is managed well, we carry away a certain virtue or psychosocial strength which will help us through the rest of the stages of our life. Number 10. On the other hand, if you don't do so well, that's when we develop maladaptation and malignancies, as well as in danger to our future development. A malignancy is the worst of the two. It involves too little of the positive and too much of the negative aspect of the task, such as a person who can't trust others. A maladaptation is not quite as bad and involves too much of the positive and too little of the negative, such as a person who trusts too much. Number 11. The crisis stages are not sharply defined steps. Elements tend to overlap and mingle from one stage to the next and to the preceding stages. Number 12. Erikson was keen to point out that transition between stages is overlapping. Number 13. Erikson also emphasized the significance of mutuality and generativity in his theory. Now, you are ready to go over the 8 stages of psychosocial development. So let's start first in the stage 1. It is between infancy and 18 months of the child. During this stage, the specific conflict is the trust versus mistrust. Sinasabing ang kailangan sagutin ng stage na ito ay mapapagkatiwalaan ko ba ang mundong ito o hindi. That means, if a young child learns to trust their mother or caregivers, now they will likely to be able to trust others in the future. If yung magulang ay binibigay agad ang pangangailangan ng bata, maiisip ng bata na he or she can trust the world kasi binigay yung gusto niya. If children, on the other hand, experience fear or continuous disappointment kung hindi consistent yung caregiver o magulang niya hindi binibigay sa bata yung gusto niya, they develop doubt and mistrust. Pag magde-develop yung bata ay meron siyang trust issues. In fact, parents who are overly protective of the child, who are there the moment the first cry comes out, will lead the child into a maladaptive tendency which Erikson calls sensory maladjustment. On the other hand, if a child whose balance is tipped way over the mistrust side, they will develop the malignant tendency of withdrawal, characterized by depression, paranoia, and possibly psychosis. Pag nakuha ng bata yung balancing attitude, magkakaroon siya ng basic strength or virtue of what we called hope. Malalagay sa isip ng bata na sa ngayon hindi pa nabibigay yung gusto niya, but he will develop hope na ibibigay rin naman ito sa kanya, hindi lang sa oras na iyon. Because the child experienced that his parents still give him what he wants. Now let's move on to stage 2. It is between 18 months to 3 years old. The basic conflict or psychosocial crisis in this stage is autonomy versus shame and doubt. Sa stage na ito, dito na nagiging malikot yung bata kasi alam na nila kung ano ang gusto nilang laruin, and it is normal because being hyper is a form of self-expression and autonomy of the child. If mom and dad permits the child to explore and manipulates his or her environment, nasisense ng bata na may kalayaan siya. Pinapansin siya, in-encourage siya na gawin yung gusto niya, the child will develop a sense of autonomy or independence. Sa kabila naman, if yung bata ay palaging pinapagalitan, pinapalo, o pinagbabawalan pag ginawa yung gusto niya, gaya ng paglalaro, the child will develop a sense of shame and doubt. Nahihiya silang sabihin kung ano ang gusto nila. If too much positive in this stage, it will lead to impulsiveness, a sort of shameless willfulness that leads you in later childhood and even adulthood to jump into things without proper consideration of your abilities. And if too much of negative in this stage, it will also lead to compulsiveness. The compulsive person feels as if their entire being rides on everything they do, and so everything must be done perfectly. Following all rules precisely keeps you from mistakes and must be avoided at all costs. The child will grow up afraid to try new things. The parents should not discourage the child, but neither should they push. Kasi pag hindi nagiging balanse, magiging spoil yung bata o hindi na mag-open up sa magulang. If it is balanced between autonomy and shame and doubt, the child will achieve the virtue called willpower or determination. One of the most admirable and frustrating things about 2 and 3-year-old is their determination. Can do is their motto. If we can preserve that can do attitude, we are much better off as adults. Now let's move on to stage 3. It is between 3 to 6 years old. This is what we call the play age. In this stage, there are two psychosocial crises, namely initiative versus guilt. Initiative means a positive response to the world's challenges, taking on responsibilities, learning new skills, feeling purposeful. This is a time for play, not for formal education. Initiative is the attempt to make that non-reality a reality. A parent has the responsibility socially to encourage a child to grow up. You're not a baby anymore. But if this process is done too harshly and too abruptly, the child learns to feel guilty about his or her feelings. In this stage, tinetest na ng bata kung ano yung mga roles na kaya niyang gawin sa buhay. Talagang napaka-active na mga bata sa paglalaro sa edad na ito. Dito nagkakaroon ng bahay-bahayan, superhero, fairy at iba pang mga laro. It answers the question, is it okay for me to do what I do? If we are encouraged, we can follow our interest. Pag na-develop yung bata, yung initiative, pwede siyang mag-take up ng role na gusto niya. Pero kapag pinapagalitan o pinagbabawalan yung bata na mag-take up ng role na gusto niya, magkakaroon siya ng guilt. On the other side, too much initiative and too little guilt means a maladapted tendency Erikson calls ruthlessness. The ruthless person takes the initiative all right. They have their plans, whether it's a matter of school or romance. It's just that they don't care what they step on to achieve their goals. The extreme form of ruthlessness is sociopathy. Harder on the person is the malignancy of too much guilt, which Erikson calls inhibition. The inhibited person will not try things because nothing ventured, nothing lost. Again, kailangan balanse pa rin ang lahat dahil may mga rules na hindi dapat gawin ng mga bata o mga bagay na hindi naayon sa kanila. Nagaya na lamang ng paglalayas o paglalakwatsa kasi gusto nilang masunod ang gusto nilang makapaglaro. Kaya minsan hindi maiwasan na sumasagot yung bata pag hindi nasunod yung gusto nila. Alam nating lahat na hindi ito appropriate para sa isang bata. If it is balanced, the child can gain a basic strength called purpose or courage. A sense of purpose is something many people crave in their lives, yet many do not realize that they themselves make their purposes through imagination and initiative. And that would be all. Thank you. And now let's proceed to the next reporter for the continuation of our topic.